Hello, everybody. My name is Agnes Johnston, and today I have the great honor of welcoming you to our panel about sustainable tourism. First, I would like to introduce our panelists. Here we have Nikolina. How about you say a couple of sentences about yourself? She's the Minister of Croatia for Tourism and Sports, and I believe you can introduce yourself best. So okay. I'll give you the stage here for a short introduction.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you and to discuss this important topic that is very horizontal for all of us, and because tourism is much, much more than it seems in the first when you say the word tourism. But for us, it includes everything. It includes the infrastructure, it includes economy, it includes social resources, it includes environmental aspect, climate changes, and everything. So in 2020, when I started my mandate as a Minister of Tourism and Sports, it was the period, as you all know, worst period, I think, for the Minister of Tourism. It was the period of global health crisis, COVID pandemic. Afterwards came geopolitical crisis, then energy crisis, then climate challenges, which are obviously here to stay with us. And we from the ministry had a very, very serious and responsible job to secure the tourism to be functional. And as we said before, the session with Gloria and her work, obviously before, we secured everything what we could do as from the ministry to the sector, because obviously the sector was hit the most through all of the world. And what we did, actually through safe stay protocols, we developed protocols for whole of the industry. Then the second step was also and it is important because of the tourists and because of the workers in the tourism and because of the local community. And then we secure vaccination for the whole of the tourism sector. They were the first one who had the opportunity to be vaccinated. And that gave us a chance to really have a stable balance through all of it, to be more resilient during the COVID period. And then what COVID gave us also, from the ministry point of view, it gave us opportunity to rethink what is happening with the tourism sector and to rethink and to see, and all of us had the opportunity to see how did the destinations look without of the over-tourism. Mm-hmm. And just this was a short introduction, just what we are doing just now. I will stop, and because and I'm a university professor from University of Zagreb, also in my life before, and now also on a doctoral thesis. So we are doing a lot of things for the sustainability now regarding for the whole sector and globally.
Well, exactly those progressions we are also going to discuss today. Now I want to give Gloria the chance to also introduce herself. Please give a short introduction about what you do and why you're here today.
Thank you, Agnes. Gloria Guevara, former Minister of Tourism for Mexico, former WTTC CEO, and today I work with the government of Saudi Arabia Chief Special Advisor. Before I give a short introduction, I want to see some hands. Who is connected to travel and tourism from the audience? Can you guys raise your hand? Oh, wow. Just 5 people. Okay, that is good. So that's now we know, exactly what we're going to be talking. Travel and tourism, 30 years of my career. My degree is in computer science, and at some point I decided to swap, and my passion was travel and tourism. That's how I ended in travel and tourism. First in the private sector, then of course as minister in my country, where I had the chance to see the impact of travel and tourism. And then in WTTC, where I had the chance to interact with 150 governments around the world, and now being part of a massive, massive transformation. Hopefully you have heard about Vision 2030, and I would like also to see some hands. Have you ever been in Saudi Arabia? Wow. 2 people, 3 people, so even less. So that is good. So that is a country that is going through a massive transformation in travel and tourism. We call tourism the new oil. Because yes, Saudi has oil for 100 years, but tourism is the sector that is going to help us to diversify. And $1 trillion is being invested, which sounds not a lot, but that's like the GDP of my country, just to put it in context. Half of that is going to a project called NEOM. The other half is going to infrastructure and tourism, and we'll be discussing some of the initiatives. But thank you for joining us, and thank you for St. Gallen to organizing this beautiful summit.
Well, thank you so much for your short introduction. As we can probably see, we have a lot of travel enthusiasts here in the audience that aren't working in tourism themselves. So I wanted to start with a short question, just to kind of get to know each other. So I traveled this summer by train for Europe. That's how I like to travel. Take a backpack and just move along. Are you a resort, all-inclusive kind of woman, or how do you like to travel? What is important to you when you visit a country?
Well, for me, when I visit a country, now as a minister, I don't have much time to see. Really, people usually say, "Oh, you're traveling a lot. Lucky you! You see different countries." Actually, when I was in Saudi Arabia, I was invited also on a World Tourism Day. I presented our acts on tourism there. We had a panel. We didn't have much time to see the beauties of a country. So before my life as a minister, we usually went or by car or by train, as a student more by train. And actually in Croatia we have now the largest investments now going really in railway infrastructure, which is starting from last year. And now we have excellent road connections, connectivity, sea connectivity. We are a country with more than 1,200 islands. Did anybody know this? That we have more than 1,200 islands actually, and more than half of them are inhabited. So we have excellent connectivity also through sea connectivity, to road connectivity, and now with railways connectivity and large investments in that segment. I think we are going to cover everything, and also airport connectivities, obviously, but. For me, as I said in the beginning, before my mandate, we as a family like to have trips, organized trips, usually for a couple of days, weeks, because I'm a professor I'm teaching logistics at the University of Zagreb. And so I had my summer time off now. Unfortunately not. The summer is the busiest period in Croatia. And now in 2020 we started the huge reform of tourism sector, and with a lot of changes. We will talk about it later on. But what we did, the first thing we talked about and worked on the shoulder season. So now the tourism in Croatia is through year-round tourism, and a lot of things are changing. And this is why one of the reasons why we want to also invest in. We started the biggest investments in the railway infrastructure.
Well, you'll definitely become very popular with us young people then. How about you, Gloria? What do you look out for when you go traveling?
I love to travel. To me, perhaps the best memories that I have in my life are traveling. When I was a child, traveling with my parents, of course, connecting with people. I think the best that this industry provides is the opportunity to connect, to develop empathy, to learn about each other, to learn about other cultures. That's what I look forward every time that I travel. Within my country, now in Saudi, my second home, or for leisure or for business. And of course, you're a different traveler. When you're for business, in and out, but it's nice to connect with the locals. And where you're traveling for leisure, building those memories is very nice, because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, just to enjoy life, no? And that's what they say, 75% of people, if you look at the statistics, prefer to travel than to buy assets. Sometimes people prioritize traveling exactly for that reason, because it gives you the opportunity to spend time with your loved ones, with your family, with your parents, with your children, or with your friends, or also to meet new friends in other destinations. So this is, to me, a sector about people and how to engage with others. And I believe the more that we travel, the more that we understand and the better empathy that we can have. So to me, that's the best asset that our sector has.
That's beautifully said. Thank you. These people all give us an hour of their time. So I think I want to start with a question of why is tourism so important for countries and maybe also people? So I want to start with you, Gloria. You talked about how Saudi Arabia wants to get away from oil and invest more in tourism. So why is tourism so important for Saudi Arabia in general and maybe also in perspective to oil?
Well, as I just saw 5 or 6 hands that are related to the sector, let me just give you really quick a global perspective. Why travel and tourism is important? 10% of the global GDP, that's for every $10 produced, 1 is thanks to travel and tourism before the pandemic. Last year was 9%, we're still recovering. This year, hopefully, we're going to be achieving a little bit over 10%. 10% of the jobs in the world, last year was 330 million jobs. This year is going to be 348. 1 in 10. What is important? If you look at the 5 years before the pandemic, and if you look at all the jobs around the world in all the industries, IT, finance, healthcare, 1 out of 4 were created thanks to travel and tourism. So travel and tourism provides opportunities where there are no opportunities in other sectors. Now, very inclusive also. For every 2 jobs, 1 is a female, a woman. 30% are youth. The first job for young people in travel and tourism, 30% is that first opportunity. So it's a massive sector that helps us to reduce poverty, to provide opportunities, but more important, to share the revenue from developed to developing countries. A lot of countries develop of the income of travel and tourism. If they don't have wonderful assets, if they don't have, mining or agriculture, travel and tourism provides that food on the table. In many, many islands around the world, in many, many developing countries around the world, and that's very important. So that's why travel and tourism is so relevant, is so important. 10% of, as I say, GDP in the world, 10% of the jobs is the 10-10-10 sector, what I call. But in my view, the most relevant is the opportunities of new jobs, 1 out of 4. And that has helped a lot of nations, including my home country, Mexico, to develop and bring opportunities where there were no opportunities in some specific destinations. That's at the macro level. Now, in the case of Saudi, we have something called Vision 2030, that after this session, it will be wonderful if you can just Google and understand a little bit what is that. And that's something that Saudi has developed. There are 3 things that I believe a country needs to develop the sector. You need to have a clear vision or a clear plan. You need to have great leadership to execute. And you need to assign the resources. And unfortunately, a lot of countries, they don't have it all. And this, in the case of Saudi, it has it all. Yes, Saudi has oil perhaps for 100 years more, but they believe that tourism is the best and is the new oil. And that's the sector that is going to provide jobs for locals and also for expats moving to Saudi, like my case. But of course, it's going to help us to maximize the assets that we have and take advantage of what the country has to offer and share the culture to the world. That's why we have this vision. And under this vision, the goal was to have 100 million tourists, domestic and international, by 2030. The goal was to contribute to 10% of the GDP direct, and to create 1 million jobs. The good news is that last year, we accomplished the 100 million, which is very interesting news because that was 7 years ahead of the plan. We had 27.4 million international travelers, and the rest, 77, were domestic. And let's remember that Saudi just opened to the world in 2019, September 27, a little bit before the pandemic, which means that a lot of Saudis are trying to discover their country. That's why it's a lot of domestic, but also a lot of foreigners coming to Saudi to see what is out there. What is it that is happening? What are these new destinations? So that's why the transformation that is happening in Saudi is very interesting, because it's taking a sector that sometimes, or an industry, is taken for granted. But at the same time, this transformation, as Nikolina was able to see and share her experience also with us in Saudi, helping the sector entirely. Not only helping Saudi, what is happening in Saudi is helping many other countries around the world.
Thank you so much for that input. You now focused a lot on prosperity that it can bring to a country. Now I want to give you the chance, Nikolina, to also maybe tell us a bit about the downsides and also maybe negative aspects that can come with tourism, and how maybe your program has tried to combat those negative downsides.
So I would just like to say that in the beginning, with your first question about the tourism, what does it mean? I think that tourism is the most democratic form of luxury, easily to say that, because a lot of people want to travel. Now they want to experience something new, they want to see a lot of other cultures, they want to see how the local communities is living, what are their ways, they want to connect with the local community, and it is very important for them. If you travel to a different country and you want to see everything what is special about this country, and what is special about this country besides natural cultural heritage are people. And the people are in the center of everything, and this is why I'm starting with this your question with this answer, because what we did in 2020, we had an opportunity to make a change, and we decided for the change we can leave it just the things like the same it was. We did the protocols, we did everything what was expected for a country to do from the ministry, from the government point of side, but we decided that, you see, Croatia is a country of less than 4 million people, and we have more than 20 million people coming to Croatia. You can see the pressure of the infrastructure, utility infrastructure, transport infrastructure, but electricity, water supply, and everything. And we are one of the countries which is the richest with the water supply, and so we don't have a problem with this. But when we did the strategy of sustainable tourism until 2030, we decided that we wanted to have regionally balanced developed tourism through all of the year. Then that we wanted tourism to be to protect the space, which is important, the space, the climate, and the environment. These three issues are very important, they're very connected, and you cannot do anything without those three issues. And then that we want to have competitive and resilient tourism. And what is the only way? The only way is through sustainability. So we changed the way we were thinking. And I remember my first meeting in 2020 during the COVID period with all of the tourism sector, because we had regular meetings, and we now continue to have some regular meeting with all of the industry. And we have 2 times a year meeting with the Prime Minister and with all of the government and all of the other ministers in the government regarding to the tourism, because we noticed that tourism can make a change in planning, make a change in planning the cities, make a change in planning the development of the cities, of the counties, of the region. And if we don't implement all of this now, it would be very, very difficult to implement it later on. I remember I had a meeting with one of the professors from academia, Croatian Academy of Science and Art, and he told me, when I presented to him our strategy document, and then afterwards we did the action plan, how to make it work on the field, how to present everything what we did, our goals, what we wrote in the strategy document, then with our action plan, and later on with our act on tourism, as we are one of the first countries really in the world to have this act on tourism. And this is important for us because now we have strategical framework, and then we have legislative framework. And without this legislative framework, and without the including of the local communities, and this is for the first time that we included the local communities in drafting this act, and I spent a lot of time traveling around the country, especially in parts of Croatia which are suffering of over-tourism now, from Dubrovnik to Istria, and then from continental part, from, I don't know, we are country rich with national parks and parks of nature, and then with, I don't know, everybody knows about, I assume, about Plitvice Lakes and what is happening with Plitvice Lakes, and why it's our duty to preserve it for future generations. And it's, as I said, sustainability is not for us just a buzzword. A lot of people think, oh yes, sustainability, but we included it in all pores. So when you see a lot of destinations in Europe now, because Europe is most visited destination in the world, and what is happening in a lot of destinations, you're reading the newspapers, you're tracking the news, the local community is now against the further development of tourism. Why? Because it is ruining their natural resources, cultural resources, traffic jams, especially the something that is important for young people, and that is the possibility to have a decent life. You cannot afford an apartment because everything is now for short-term rentals. So especially in the old city centers like in Dubrovnik, Split, Zagreb, not to mention all the other parts of the cities in Croatia. So for us, we see it as a demographical also issue, and we were included also in the European Commission and giving a lot of regulations, like short-term regulation. And with all of this, I will later on explain how we did it in this Act on Tourism, but we have to take it in consideration, and we really did with all of these segments, which are important, especially for young generations.
Thank you so much for that input. I think important here would be a question of both of you have cities that deal with a lot of tourists. Some might say overcrowded. Do you believe that there should, in certain destinations, be limits on how many tourists should be allowed to enter? And how would you implement limits like these, also maybe to protect the local community? Let me start with Gloria.
Yes.
When I was in WTTC, we looked at a couple of cities in Europe that they were reporting overcrowding. Mm-hmm. And Tiffany from my former team is here, who helped me with the study. Why do we have overcrowding? And I don't know if you have heard about overcrowding. Overcrowding is when you have a lot of travelers in a specific destination and they impact the local community. Overcrowding, we came up to the conclusion that is a result of lack of planning, and the planning happens at all levels. That means that at the country level, didn't engage with the community or didn't engage with the municipality. We went to 2 of these destinations and we learned that, yes, they had plans, but they had 4 different plans for the same destination, and the plans were not aligned. Nikolina mentioned something very important, which is the community engagement. In your plans as a destination, you need to involve the community. The community has to benefit from travel and tourism, because if the community doesn't benefit, you have a problem right there. Second, the planning needs to include it all. Imagine a country that has 40 million citizens and receives 80 million visitors every year. That's the case of Spain as an example. There has an impact in the water, in the electricity, and the waste, everything. So if you don't plan for those visitors, you have a problem. And overcrowding is exactly that. When you don't include the community, when you don't do a proper planning, you have overcrowding. Now, sustainability is very important to look at different aspects. Yes, we have the climate, we have the environment, we have the culture, but we also have the social aspect. And in the case of the social aspect is the community. The community is crucial. The community has to be part of the process. The community has to receive the benefits, and the community has to be engaged. To answer to your question, if you have good planning and everyone can benefit from travel and tourism, you can grow. But if you don't have a good planning, if you receive a lot of travelers, and on top of that, because of your lack of planning, those travelers they don't share the benefit from the community, so they come in and out, they don't spend money, they don't create jobs, they have an impact and leave a lot of waste, for instance, in your city, or they impact in terms of where do they stay, because they have short-term rentals in some cases, not very well regulated, and that increase the prices, for instance, for the locals of where to live. So there are multiple consequences for the lack of planning that we see as a result of overcrowding. Now, Nikolina did a great job in the case of Dubrovnik, which is a great example that they had a lot of issues with travelers coming exactly the same day. You have thousands of people arriving in Dubrovnik, and she engaged with the community and she engaged with all the different stakeholders, and she can share more details on that of the perfect planning. But you will see cities, and I have seen and analyzed a lot of cities where you need to do a good job planning, and on top of that, you need to create more product. There are some destinations that they continue growing, the number of travelers that they receive every year, and you don't feel overcrowded. Why you don't feel overcrowded? Because they have different offerings, and they take you to different places. Not everyone goes to the same location every day and every month and every year where you feel overcrowded. And there's an opportunity, as I say, for planning. So to me, based in science and the data and a lot of research, overcrowding is the result of lack of planning. Yes, you need to, in that planning, define what is going to be your growth. How many tourists can you really, truly manage in your city? And what kind of tourists do you want? Do you want tourists, of course, that spend? Do you have the product for them to spend your money? Because how many times have you traveled to a destination that you want to buy, you want to have a great experience, and there's nothing to buy, or nothing interesting actually to buy, or for you to enjoy the local culture? That's because of the lack of planning and the lack of engagement in the community. So as long as you have a good plan and you engage with the community, I believe that you can reduce overcrowding, which takes you to have the right number of travelers, because let's remember, for every 34 travelers, you create one job. So do we want more travelers? Yes, but as long as those travelers come with the environment in mind, and every time that they visit is good for the city, is good for the community, and is good for the economy, and the impact is less.
Beautifully said. I also want to touch on that later again, but you also mentioned, Nikolina, in your speech. I want to give you now the space to tell how you manage your overcrowding problem.
Okay, so this was one of the biggest issues when we started working on our Act on Tourism. And you see, for example, now everybody read, I assume that Venice is now entering a tax for entering the city. But if you ask me, I think I agree completely with Gloria. You have to manage the tourist flows. You have to connect everything to know. I think this is the much better way if you manage the tourist flows, together with the tourist agencies and tourist boards. It's a difficult task. It's not so easy, but it is manageable. And what we did through this our Act on Tourism, for every city and every county, they will have to do management plans for the development plans of every city or the community, but according to the carrying capacities. So my brain is like more logistical and technical mind, but so I have to have all of the data, and with the data, then I can make a decision. Without the data, sometimes you can be very good, sometimes you do bad decisions. But this is why we decided to go in this direction. Our act is truly evidence-based policy making. And through this segment, for example, City of Dubrovnik or City of Split or City of Zadar, they're going to have to make calculations through carrying capacity. So they will see actually, with all of the data, what they have, how many electricity, water supply, transport infrastructure, utility infrastructure for the local community. And then they can compare it when the tourists come, what is the exact number of exact number of the tourists which can come to the destination, and they don't have any problems with the local communities, with the water supply, what is happening through all of the Europe in overcrowded destinations. So with these calculations, what they are now going to have to do, management plans are for 4 years. Every 4 years, they're going to have a new management plan, but according to the carrying capacities. Through these carrying capacities, they will see and gather all of the necessary data. So we included in this act the local community. If you say why we included them, because if you put it in strategy and say, oh yes, it would be nice for local communities to be included in this, to hear their point of view, how does their tourists coming affect their lives, daily lives during the, as I said, accommodation for the young people, especially for the noise, for the traffic, for the waste and everything combined, nothing will happen. But we smartly included them in all of the documents that are going to be done by our tourist boards. And what we did next step, we included the mayors, we included the prefects, because it is their responsibility and their duty to manage the development of the cities, especially in the tourist destination. They have to be champions. They have to really know what is happening in every segment of what I'm now saying. We, as a government, gave them a tool. We prescribed all of the indicators. We developed social indicators and how to measure it and how to measure them, to see the quality of life, for example, of the local community. How are they included in every segment of the tourism sector? Then for environmental parameters, and then economic, because we believe with all of these three pillars to be connected together, then you have the right balance for the local community and for the tourists at the end, as Gloria said, to be satisfied with everything. Okay. Because it is a lot of jobs to be done, but what we did, we started also in digitalization of everything what I'm now speaking, because then it's going to be much, much easier for them to calculate and measure. And in Croatia, we have tourist boards through all of the country, and directors of the tourist board, the national tourist board, and us as the ministry. And then, as I said, we connected the responsibilities of mayors and the prefects, who have to be in charge because they are the bosses of the director of the tourist board, and they have to have the clear calculations what they have in their destinations. For example, we in country, we have index of tourism development. We develop it from the ministry level, so we know in every segment what is happening through all of the Croatia, on the coastal part and the continental part. And it gives us a tool how to see and calculate evidence-based policy making, not by just sometimes thinking, oh, we will stop at 15,000, 20,000 or a million or something like this. But with this tool, it gives us opportunity to plan further the transport infrastructure, for example, in the city of Dubrovnik. And they are calculating for us all city and for the whole city what are the plans. And I think it gives them, this act gives them a possibility to now, with this, they can say, okay, we don't want any more short-term rentals in the city.
Yeah,
and that is a good thing. That is an excellent thing, especially for young people.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I know my rent prices. But I also think we have a lot of travelers in this room. And I've heard the word responsibility from both of you guys now. And I also believe that a lot of people in this room care about sustainability. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sitting here right now. And I want to talk about responsibility. So we've been talking a lot about the government. Do you see the main responsibility lying within the traveler, the government, or businesses? What is your opinion on that, Gloria?
I think all of the above. For many years, we have depended on the governments to do the work, and sometimes the businesses. But I think it's all of the above. And we need to take a look at the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Yes, we have the governments at the country level. We also have the destinations, that they should, for instance, give us the right tools and have the right policies for us to be more sustainable. The traveler, and of course, the businesses. And let me just give you a context. Travel and tourism contributes to 8% of the greenhouse emissions, 8%. 40% of that is transportation, right? And the 30% is facilities and hospitality. Now, when you look at transportation, yes, you can say, I can choose the train instead of a plane. That makes sense within Europe. But if you want to go to Mexico or the US or Saudi, of course you have to fly. And then you can offset. Now, food waste is an example for travelers. Do you know that food waste contributes between 8 and 10% of the global emissions? Food waste. And unfortunately, 40% of the food wasted in the developed countries is from the kitchen to the fork, which means that a lot of that is wasted on the plates. As a traveler, as an example, we can stop demanding buffets, because buffets, they produce a lot of CO2 emissions because there's a lot of food wasted. That's one example. The traveler spends 8 to 9 times more water when we travel. And then you have an impact on the community. So as a traveler, you can take a look at how much water you waste. At the same time, do you know that only 9% of plastics, only 9% are recycled? You can say, I'm going to try to recycle my plastic or try to reduce the footprint of plastic, right? But then you need also the destination to provide you the right tools so that you can truly recycle when you're traveling. Sometimes you travel, and I don't know how you've been in destinations that they don't even recycle. They don't give you the option to recycle your waste. So as a traveler, yes, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to go to different destinations. Saudi has an interesting case in Alula. It's one of the cities that has been developed where we have the community engagement. The community is the one that provides the tours, the tour operators. The community is in charge of the shops. The community is in charge of managing the waste. And the community is in charge of making sure that they produce local and consume local. That's why the community is so crucial in being sustainable, because you can be the best traveler of the world, the most responsible, but if the destination doesn't have that as a priority, it's more complicated. And that's why we need to look at this from a stakeholder perspective. But then also you have destinations that they are there responsible and the traveler is not responsible. We demand buffets, we waste water, we use a lot of plastic, and on top of that, we don't select the best options for transportation, and we don't engage with the community, or we don't buy local products, or we select products that they are imported and they have a bigger footprint that getting the local products. I've seen travelers that they demand strawberries, as an example, in places that the strawberries are not produced, and they bring the strawberries from another country, which of course has a large footprint. What about if we consume local products? So to me, the traveler is responsible. It's a very important stakeholder that can help us to make sure that next time that we travel is good for the planet, good for the community, and good for the environment, but also the destination, and we need to be part of the solution. And of course, the governments and the businesses. In the food waste, the restaurants can help us to reduce food waste as an example, because 12% of the food wasted is in hospitality, hotels and restaurants. So we have a lot still to do. Yes, emissions are the most important, the one that you see, but at the end of the day, as I say, food wasted is exactly just the food waste is exactly the same size as the entire travel and tourism sector. So there are a lot of things that we can do in order to reduce the footprint together, and the traveler is key in this.
Okay, so you heard, don't waste food and be a responsible traveler, please. I also want to give you a short chance to respond to this question.
Well, I think that first of all, the government level should do a strategical framework and legal framework. That is what we did actually in Croatia. Yes. And that is main responsibility of the government. And then you have to include the businesses and all of hospitality sector in all of the processes you're doing. And you have to have consultations, regular consultations with them. And when I started speaking about it in 2020, some of them are looking strangely to me, but more and more with time is changing, and we did our surveys, what are the tourists are changing their habits. They want to travel to sustainable destination. They want to travel to destinations where they can measure their footprint. And actually in Croatia, what we did with the hospitality sector, especially with our camps now, they're so sustainable. From the material they're building, from everything they're using inside of the camps, inside of the new hotels which we are supporting, so the tourists can measure their footprint. They are really so responsible. You cannot believe. I'm so happy because of this, that's showing, especially young generations of tourists which are coming to Croatia. They really look on the websites and they really want to go in these kind of places, in these islands which are so sustainable, and these campsites, because we have one of the biggest and the beautiful campsites in I would say in the Mediterranean, because we are so close to the seaside. And this is one thing that is asking from us and from the tourists to be responsible, to preserve what we have, really. And this is something what Gloria was mentioning. It really comes from your parents and from how you teach your children. And now I think that there's no problem with this issue. The more and more people, they really recycle. They know how the climate, as I said, we have climate challenges with us. They're going to stay with us. And if we don't take it seriously, then we are going to have large problem, biggest problem in the whole of the world, not only in Europe regarding the tourism, but regarding the all other branches. And for us as a country, it is very important because now we are among 166 countries through SDG goals. We are on the 12th place. So this means that we took it very seriously, and that means that the younger generations are taking it more and more seriously. And what we are now doing, we also secured funds for green transition. And we secured about 1.3 billion euros from the Commission through the National Recovery and Resilience Program. But the Commission didn't lend us helicopter money just for the tourism. They are giving us the money to be responsible through all of these green politics we are introducing, and through all of the sector and through all of the investments we are now just giving them for the greenfield, for the brownfield investments, but according to all elements of green criteria, to all sustainability criteria, and they're very, very much supporting it, the whole of the industry and whole of the hospitality sector. We have now programs how to teach them about the waste disposal. We are introducing with them local food from the local suppliers. You can now, in one of the largest hotel groups and the campsites, also we have more than 80% local. So I think that is something that is going to be normal for the whole Europe and much, much wider. And it is important to point out everything what we are doing. It's crucial because climate changes are here with us and everything is changing. Everything is changing now. So we have to adapt, but we have to learn to be more sustainable in all areas.
I think also being more sustainable in all areas includes to know the limits of certain destination, what is possible and what isn't. And there I have one question that is first specific to Saudi Arabia and then one for Croatia. You mentioned before your project NEOM. Within that project, there is another project called Trojena, right?
Trojena, right.
And it's kind of the ops of the Middle East. And it will rely mostly on artificial snow because of its non-natural snowfall. At the same time, you're planning on being a zero-carbon destination. As a traveler myself that wants to be sustainable, how does that work?
How's the balance? That's a great question. I think when you plan a destination from zero, it's easier to include in your plans from the beginning the sustainability agenda and the climate agenda. And I say easier in quotes because it's not easy, of course. But you can include that in your plans. NEOM, as an example, is a city that is planned with a citizen in the center, and that is not going to take you less than 20 minutes point to point, right? It has a lot of challenges, but the plan is very clear. It needs to be sustainable from day number one. Trojena, to your example, is going to be hosting the Winter Olympics. And you're right, it's going to be on a snow destination in Saudi. That people say snow in Saudi, that sounds strange. But yes, we have snow in the north. But that's part of the plan. How can we recycle water? How do we consider sustainability? And all of that is considered. As part of other giga projects, we have the Red Sea. What Saudi is doing is interesting. I say that I'm Mexican. I was the Minister of Tourism in my country. Cancun, some of you probably have heard about Cancun, was created or was developed from scratch 50 years ago. We learned some lessons, of course, in that build-up of Cancun. And what Saudi is doing is learning from the successes from others, but also from the mistakes from others, so that we're trying to catch up and leapfrog. One interesting example is the Red Sea, that is very close to NEOM that you mentioned. We want not only to protect the coral reef, that we have the 4th largest in the world, but we're looking to regenerate the coral reef. Because it's not only about protecting, it's how do you make it better. And in every single project that we are developing from zero, that's what we have in the mind. How do we do it better? Who has done it before? How do we learn from that experience so that we don't make the same mistakes and at the same time we improve? So it's easier to do it, as I say, and I say easier in quotes, in these giga projects because we're building them from zero. But at the same time, there are some destinations that we already have that we need to adapt, that we need to change, and that's going to take time. And that's why we have a massive plan, for instance, of forestation. The Kingdom committed 10 billion trees. 10 billion trees are going to be planted. So far, we have more than 45 million. We're in target to reach 600 million by 2030. And that's important because deforestation contributes to 20% of the emissions global. And that's very important because those trees are the ones that help us to capture that CO2. And that would help us in these developed destinations already to contribute. So you need to do in parallel for destinations that you are developing, such as NEOM, the Red Sea, the RIA, Alula, all these giga projects, so that they are climate neutral. But at the same time, how do we catch up for the ones that they already exist and we don't make the same mistakes and we try to accelerate? Is that easy? No, it's not easy. It's very complicated because we need to include all the stakeholders. But what's important is that we have a plan to get there. And it's going to take time, of course, and a lot of engagement, a lot of investment, and a lot of commitment. In water, for instance, Saudi is doing a lot of desalination. We spend a lot of money with water in that case, and we're also recycling a lot of water. And there are massive efforts in terms of water so that we don't waste, try not to waste water or limit the waste of water, similar to management of the waste. Waste of food is another one that we need to do more, and there's a plan for that. So all of this is part of a strategy called Saudi Green Initiative, and then we also have the Middle East Green Initiative that includes all these pillars with very clear goals and exactly what we're going to do by when. It's just a matter of continue executing, but as you say, it's not easy, it's interesting, and it's challenging, but it needs to be done. That's very important, and to me, what's reassuring is the commitment at the highest level with the climate and green agenda. If you don't have that, then it's just talk. Here is actually less talk and more action, and let's just move, keep moving regardless of what is being said or what is being done in other places.
Thank you so much for that answer. I think that was very interesting to hear about your desalination process, also to use technology to become more sustainable. I think Croatia has a lot different place that you have to start from because you can start from new with NEOM. And you have, since 1990, been seeing the highest tourism growth rates in Europe. You've also been ranked the 5th most Googled travel destination, so props to you on that. Now my question is here. You have been saying that you've been struggling with infrastructure issues. How are you planning on solving the issue, but still preserving the cultural heritage that comes with cities like Dubrovnik, for example?
The reason why we really started this reform was we wanted to secure and to all of our resources, cultural heritage, natural heritage, and we wanted to really wanted to leave something for our generations which will come. And as I said in the beginning, if we didn't do anything, we could leave it like it is. We could leave the tourism to develop like it did before. And now, when in 20s, we really did a deep analysis of overcrowded destinations. We did a deep analysis of all of the historical heritage in Croatia and the cities, and with natural parks and parks of nature. Croatia is full of them, and we started from this point. And as you said, the problem of infrastructure. It is a problem of utility infrastructure, it's a problem of transport infrastructure, it is a problem for the local communities and from the tourists that are coming. So we saw that if we are not going to solve this issue now, it's going to raise to much, much bigger problem. And then we cannot talk about tourism. We cannot talk about the development of the cities for the young people to stay in the cities because they are moving from the cities, because then they cannot have affordable apartment, as I said, for them to plan their families. They are moving away from for example, from the city center of the Dubrovnik. But when the tourists are coming, they want to see how the local community is living in the city center. Some tourists actually asked me, do people really live here? I said, yes, they're living here. And they said, it looks like so beautiful, and they cannot imagine that somebody is living here. Somebody actually said to me in city of Dubrovnik, is this like a stage? You put it on, and then you, after October, you separate everything? I said, no, people are actually living here. So, this is one of the reasons why we really wanted to preserve everything, and especially for the infrastructure, which is really necessary. If you don't have infrastructure, suitable infrastructure for everything, and if you don't plan, like Gloria mentioned, and some of them, like she said, we also had a lot of plans, but we now, through this act, merge them all together. And now you can really do something. You can do changes. You have responsibilities. You can plan, spatial planning. It's very important. Every other kind of plans that now must be seen through all of them together. And it is a problem because if you don't include before, as I said, local community didn't have anything to say, but now we included them to this act, and now they can also say, look, there's something, and they know for the best what is happening in their city centers, or
because they actually live there.
Yes, they actually live there. It is easy for me to say that I'm coming, and for you maybe because you're coming for a week or two, or you're traveling through Croatia or something. But for them, they're staying there through all of the year. And so with this kind of planning, with this kind of study, with carrying capacities, now we will have all of the data. And as I said, without the data, you cannot do anything. Mm-hmm. And we had actually, when I talked with other ministries in the European Union, we have a lot of data, but not all of the data is usable. So now we will prepare everything with inclusion of everything, from the municipalities to, as I said, to the mayors. They have to be responsible for the development and how they see the development of their city. For example, first of all, they have to have the strategy for the development. They have to see what they want to develop: cultural tourism, they want to develop health tourism, they want to develop which kind of tourism they want to develop. And then afterwards, they have to calculate these carrying capacities, and through carrying capacities, they will see the exact numbers, something they lack or something they would like to develop more. For example, I see Croatia as a small country, but like a boutique destination, what we really are. And I don't think that we need more mass tourism coming to Croatia, but we want to spread it. And now, when we calculate the numbers, you see we had the best shoulder season ever last year, and now it is happening more and more. Tourists are coming in shoulder seasons because they don't actually, due to the climate changes, they don't want to go to Croatia when it's 40 degrees. What can you see when you have to be in your room for half of the day, and then you're coming out with all of the people who are in one center struggling to see all of the cultural heritage and something like this. But it is all influencing on this. So with all of this preparation and calculations, now they can plan really how to develop the infrastructure, what are they missing, and with the inclusion, without them, as I said, local community, nothing could be done. Nothing, really, because each and every one of you who are sitting here should be included in the development of your cities or regions, and because you are living there, you know what is the best for this region, and this is the only way we can go forward.
That was a very good input. Thank you so much. As very eager travelers are surely awaiting to ask their own questions for you, I think you gave us a super base to start off on. Now I want to give you the chance to ask our panelists your questions that have probably been burning in your mind.
Two questions right here, and one right there.
maybe raise your hand again. Or, yeah, there.
Very welcome to Gallen, first of all. I have a question for Gloria. I was wondering, how are you preparing for the World Cup in 10 years? And how are you preparing for the probably increasing number of religious tourists in Mecca and Medina?
Those are great questions. We are going to be hosting World Cup. We're going to be hosting Expo also in 2030. And there's a committee, in this case, in charge of all the planning. In the case of the World Cup, the Minister of Sports is leading the efforts, but everyone is included, the Minister of Transport, Tourism, Culture, and everyone looking at the stadiums that we have, but working hand in hand with the private sector and with, of course, the cities. Similar to Expo. There's a committee that we're going to be hosting Expo in 2030, and there are plans that we're going to have. What's interesting about Saudi, if I may say, this country is being run in a way like private sector. And why do I say that? Because in my 30 years, I have worked a lot in corporations. And in the private sector, what do? You have a business plan, you have your KPIs, and you have quarterly reviews. And that's exactly what we do. We have our KPIs, our business plans, and every quarter we look at the progress. And it's fascinating to see if you are on target, good news. If you're not on target, you have to explain why the deviation and what are you doing to catch up. So in the case of the World Cup, it's exactly like that. They are building that plan as we speak, with all the different parties included. The hotels, of course, because they need to offer good rates. So we need to have enough rooms. And, of course, the tour operators, the transports, and the stadiums, and hand in hand with FIFA in this case. As I say, the guy in charge, actually, or organizing that used to work for the Ministry of Tourism, so he's hand in hand with the Ministry of Tourism. But Expo is exactly the same. There's a plan in place with quarterly deliverables. That's what we're planning, and making sure that we include every part. And at the same time, learning from past experiences. What were the mistakes, what worked, what didn't work, so that we can include that in the plan, which is very important. Now, in terms of religious tourism, there are 1.5 or 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. And according to the pillars of Islam, one of the pillars is at some point in their life, they need to come to Mecca and Medina, right? So once in their life, they need to come for Hajj and Umrah, which are the two reasons that they visit Mecca and Medina. Mecca has a capacity, my understanding, of 25 million per year. So, and Medina also probably a little bit more. Before we opened to tourism, the Muslims were able to come and only to visit Mecca and Medina and out of the country. Since 2019, when we opened to tourism, the strategy has changed. And we are inviting them to stay longer. Actually, the average stay now has increased, I believe, to 10 days. What they are doing, they come to Mecca and Medina for religious reasons. And then they are also going to Jeddah, Taif, that, by the way, if you have heard about Taif, the best roses in the world are from Taif. They are very, not the most beautiful ones, but in terms of the smell, you go and cut them in the morning, and the whole day you're smelling like roses, which is interesting. And the oil is, of course, sent for perfumes, but that's very close to Mecca. So a lot of these visitors come to Taif, they go to Jeddah, they go to Mecca, they go to Medina, so we expand the stay. And what are we doing? Our minister, His Excellency Ahmed Al-Khatif, is doing site inspections. We're building more hotels in Mecca and Medina to improve the state. We're building more sites so that they can have a better experience and they can enjoy. Muslims can only go to Mecca. However, non-Muslims, we can go to Medina. You don't go to the center, but you can go around and understand, and you're welcome to visit. And we have also a strategy for that. So we want to maximize that opportunity because Saudi is the custodian of the two holy places, but at the same time, share the culture, the history of the country, the gastronomy, and all the beautiful assets that we have with visitors that they come for religious reasons to expand the stay. So there is a win-win for them to see the country and for us to maximize the stay and their spend. And for that, we have multiple initiatives with working with tour operators. We're making sure that you have great service, great quality, but more important, that you have a chance to connect with locals and also have a chance to enjoy the food and connect with people. Hopefully I answer your question. Yes. Okay, good.
Perfect. Maybe the man in the blue shirt in the front.
Good morning. My name is Dominique. I'm representing an initiative of regenerative tourism. So good morning to Switzerland. I hope, Nikolina, you came by train. Because, you know, here we often talk about action and not words. And it's important that we follow the words. And I'm also astonished that we talk about a project like NEOM in the case of sustainability. So I strongly believe that we have to expand our understanding of sustainability beyond just collecting plastic bottles and plantings on trees. So what does a ski resort in the desert do to the biodiversity, to the birds, to the snakes, and to all of the ecosystem there? I wonder. I don't know. My question to both of you would be, what about authenticity as a source of tourism and of sustainable tourism? So what would be, you know, not the most profitable way to do NEOM in the desert for skiers from China or Switzerland? But what about authenticity to use as a source of sustainable tourism?
Yeah, there is a great question. Let me just clarify, first of all, NEOM is not in the desert, okay? NEOM is in the north of the country, and there's no desert there. I mean, more than welcome to come and see it. Saudi, we have mountains, we have lakes. Yes, we have desert. I live in Riyadh, and Riyadh is in the middle of the desert. But NEOM, if you see the north, it's not desert. There's snow, actually, because of the mountains and the altitude. But I take your point, which is pretty much how do you plan to do something like that, right? And also talking about the snow and the climate. I agree with you that sustainability is not only food waste and plastic and all of that. My examples were examples for the travelers to start doing something. Because if you just ask the audience here, who knows the footprint for the trip to this symposium? I would like to know what is our footprint to come in here, and I can guarantee you that 99% of us, we don't know. 99%. And sometimes it's very difficult to take action and make decisions when you don't have the information. And there's so much out there that it also creates confusion. And that's what is, I would say, one of the complications of the climate agenda. So answering to your question about the authenticity, I think is crucial. There's something that I call, and I have called for 20 years, destination DNA. And what is the DNA? That's what is unique of that destination. And if we don't preserve that DNA, there's no value in that destination from my point of view. When I was the Minister of Tourism, as an example, we look at Cancun and I say, okay, Cancun is wonderful, but what is the difference of that region? And when we look at the region and did an assessment, we learned that what was unique about the region was the Maya culture. And we made a point about preserving the Maya culture, working with the Mayas, engaging them in the community, and benefiting from the travelers that they were coming to Cancun. And you're too young, I don't know if you remember, but we launched the end of the calendar, which was in 2012. And we made a point for people to say, if you want to know what is going to happen with the end of the Maya calendar, that it was 5,000 years, come and see yourself. But what we're trying is to invite people to learn about the Mayas. So to your point, we need to preserve that authenticity. Because if we don't preserve that, there's no value. You can have, like they say, a bucket list of places to visit, but what is the benefit if you don't get the learnings, the connections, and the understanding of what's unique about that place? Every time that I travel, I look for that DNA. What is different in that place that I don't find that elsewhere? And yes, as a travel and tourism sector officials and representatives, our job is to make sure that we preserve that DNA. And that DNA is in the center. It's what you call heritage, is what you call culture, is those traditions that at the end of the day make people proud. In my country, we have a lot of traditions. Perhaps you heard about the Day of the Dead. We protect that. That's one of our traditions. There's a region in the country that we protect that, and the community is part of that. And we have to be very respectful of those traditions, while at the same time, the travelers can come and enjoy that experience. We can benefit from their visits so that they spend money, and that goes back to the community to create jobs, put food on the table, but we need to do it also in a sustainable way. So it's not only the responsibility, as I say, from the government, it's from everyone, all the stakeholders. But what you call unique, to me, has to be at the center of the planning that I mentioned before. The DNA is the first part of the entire value chain. If we don't protect that culture, if we don't protect those traditions, if we don't protect your assets, it's like a fake destination. What we need to understand is what is that DNA of every single destination that we have right now, and how do we make sure that we protect that? Hopefully I answer your question. Now, Nikolina, you want to add on that?
I would like to say that you're 100% correct. Because one of the main reasons why we decided to go in this direction, it wasn't easy, really. It was really difficult decision to go in this direction. It was really difficult to include everybody in this job, because it is a huge job in front of us. We finished the act. Now we are doing the bylaws, finishing them. We are prescribing for every destination what they have to do, how to calculate it, how to. Certainly they have to include universities or institutes, but and the ministry is going to do a lot of job for them. So I know that they don't have resources. All of the communities, like local communities, are not the same. They're not on the same level of the development, so they don't have the resources. But what we did, we included every associations, environmentally also associations in our, when we were doing this act, to see their opinion. For us, it is important. We are a country, we are very proud that we have one of the cleanest seas in Europe. So you can see the bottom I don't know if you visited Croatia ever. So we really wanted to preserve this, the whole ecosystem. When you say it's very important. So we have Periska. I don't know if Periska is Mato, you can help me. Shell, which is really in a problem, because it is through neglectance and there are not so much of them in Adriatic Sea, but they are now returning. They are now returning because everything which we are on local governments includement, with all of the associations, with all together what we are doing for the ecosystem, and it is very much important. And why this act is very important? So you can plan, you can see how the development, for example, of agriculture is influencing some lagoons and parts of Croatia near seaside, and how does that influence for the ecosystem in their area, how to include also. This is why I said it is really important. People don't understand that local community really who are living there, they know the best way what is happening there. So we are not planning new developments. As I said, we don't want to have a lot of big hotel groups and companies in Croatia, but we want for the people to, for example, so for the mayors to plan, but according to the analysis-based policy making to the data, to see if they need further development, how is the infrastructure now, what is happening with the utility infrastructure, with everything combined together. And as I said in the beginning, I'm very proud that we are now investing, I think 1.3 billion euros or something like this in railway infrastructure. It is very important for us to have developed railway infrastructure. I know it because I'm coming from the logistics sector, so I'm fully supporting it. And to answer a question, unfortunately, I didn't come because it would take me 5 days to come here. And I cannot afford the time to be, because yesterday I was in another town, and now I'm here and I'm traveling again. So, but it would be great for all of the travelers who are coming to use more railway infrastructure, to be through Europe. I think it's the best way to travel. You cannot have better accommodation, security, and everything you are mentioning, and you're traveling with your children, not only the students. And I'm really for supporting it, and so I'm so very happy that we are going to, as a government, decided to have, and we are now on 4 corridors in TNT network as a Croatia. Only Germany and Croatia are on 4 corridors, so it is for us a big success because it allows us to have more investments in the ports and connectivity with the ports and the railway infrastructure. So these are all of the parameters actually which they are going to calculate regarding the quality of the sea, for example. It's going to be one of the biggest things because we want to preserve the quality of the sea and not to destroy it. So everything is connected. You cannot take one thing. This is the reason why I said all of the 3 pillars must be connected together: environmental, social, and economic. Without of this, you cannot have sustainability.
Thank you so much for that input. We have time for one more question. Right there on the left.
We have 2 actually.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we only have time for one more. So you have the honor.
Thank you. I'm John. I'm Turkish, and I have a question to you again. I want to address the elephant in the room about the kingdom's terrible human rights record and huge disregard to international law. And this is coming from a Turkish person. My question is, by meaning tourism in the kingdom's perspective, the new oil, did you mean a monetary return or just another opportunity to rebrand, since the extraordinary spending on sports washing and tourism washing, I don't believe the return of investment will be very profitable in the next century. Yeah, thank you.
That's a lot of questions. Exactly. First of all, I'm Mexican, and I'm by choice in Saudi Arabia. Why I'm in Saudi Arabia? Let's start with that, right? Because I'm supporting Vision 2030. What is Vision 2030? It's a massive transformation that I have not seen in my generation. Why that transformation is important? Because I believe, my personal views, that transformation is going to shift some of the dynamics that we see in other parts of the world, and it's going to help. Let me give you one example. We went from not allowing women to drive and to travel, okay, to an equal job, equal pay law. Unfortunately, in many countries, you don't have an equal job, equal pay law for women. That we monitor how much women are making exactly in the same job, and on top of that, there are jobs for women, boards, corporate, and we're developing women for ministry positions. I personally mentor people, women, to move up in the scale. That's important. That transformation is relevant? I think so. As a female and a daughter of another woman, I think it's important because that's going to help us to give the example in other parts of the world that this is possible, that this is good. Part of the transformation Vision 2030 is to make sure that all the female are financially independent. That's good or that's bad? In my view, that is wonderful. Because there was a big unemployment of women, and at least in travel and tourism today, 45% of the almost 1 million jobs that we have in the kingdom are female. Now, is the vision perfect? I don't know. But what I can tell you is what I see. I have been living 3 years in that country, and every single week I see changes. And the changes are very positive. I mentioned about the female. What about other entities, other sectors, other industries? When you look at the climate agenda, yes, it's an oil country. But if you go into the details of the Saudi Green Initiative, you will see that Saudi is also leading the transition. The largest hydrogen plant for the experts here in climate, and I'm not an expert in climate by no means, is in the north, close to NEOM, because we believe that hydrogen is supposed to be part of the future, right? We believe also, if you look at the solar panels, we're installing a lot of solar panels. If you think about electric cars, We're producing electric cars. So a lot of examples that are happening in the kingdom that perhaps they need to be shared more out there, the people are not aware. At the end of the day, what I believe is everything perfect? Absolutely not. But what I believe is that we have the path to transform this country, and the transformation that is happening here is interesting and is helping other nations. The other thing that the kingdom, to me, has been very interesting is the fact that this is not a sum-zero game, that one has to lose and another one has to win. I will invite you, there was an interview recently, some months ago actually, in Fox News, that it was His Royal Highness interview, and his views about the world, to me, were refreshing. Why was that? Because he said very clear, it's not that I win and the other one loses. If China is not successful, we all are going to be impacted. So we need to make sure that there's a room for everyone. That is the vision, and that's what we have. A lot of heads of state, including from your country and from many countries, that have come to the kingdom. And as I say, we want to foster that collaboration. Nikolina was there. We have had, in my time in the kingdom, more than 90 heads of state. And what's reassuring is that in every single session with the leader, 20, 30, 50% of the time was talking about the importance of travel and tourism, where, by the way, some countries, unfortunately, take it for granted. And they don't assign the resources, neither the right policies. They just get the benefits. I think we need to have the resources, we need to invest in people, and we need to develop the sector. Why do we call it the new oil? Because we believe that travel and tourism is a sector that provides opportunities, that is going to help the kingdom to reduce unemployment, that today is providing a lot of opportunities for women and for youth globally, but also in Saudi Arabia. I mentioned before, 1 out of 4 jobs created 5 years before the pandemic, and probably now it's even more. We're waiting for the results, thanks to travel and tourism. Your country has been transformed thanks to travel and tourism. I was in Istanbul recently. I was so impressed with the work that was done there. I was in Antalya as well. I love it. That was my first time in Antalya, how the locals have controlled their destiny. And they have nice resorts, they invite people from all over the world, but the most important, they create opportunities, decent jobs, and they help the entire community working together to have new opportunities that elsewhere you didn't have them. So to your point, is it perfect? No, not perfect, but in my personal and humble opinion, it's moving in an interesting direction, and we have a plan, and we're executing.
Actually, Gloria, in 2019, before the pandemic, you're correct, the tourism sector was the 3rd largest export category globally, empowering more than 1 million jobs around the world. So we are waiting for new data.
Listen, last year, 330 million jobs. This year, it's estimated 348 million jobs. What I can tell you is that I was the CEO of WTTC during the pandemic. We were so worried because 200 million jobs were going to be impacted. That's a lot of jobs, a lot of people without their first income. And that was a big problem. That was the engagement with all the countries, and the leaders and the governments was so crucial. And yes, we can say, stop flying because we pollute. But the reality, if we just say stop flying, we need to understand that all the consequences. In countries such as Africa, you increase the illegal poaching. In countries in the Caribbean, you increase the illegal fishing. You have people that they have no income, no food on their table, because tourism is the only source that they have for them to survive. So it's very important to find that balance, and it's a very complicated balance that I don't have an answer. But we need to make sure that next time that we travel is good for the planet, good for the environment, but good for the community, so that at the end of the day, we can have that social impact and also reduce poverty and help others. But as I say, I think what is happening there is helping as well.
Maybe on this note, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
that.
Thank you.
Just one more sentence, then I'll let you leave. I'm sure you're hungry. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your expertise. And thank you also now in the end of reminding us to be part of this change, and maybe be part of changes in companies, countries. That's what we stand for. So I hope you learned something today, and yeah, have a good lunch.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You.